nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, perfect. Then we will move on to special presentations. And our first special presentation this evening is from Dr. Haddad for the St. Vrain School District.
Good evening. Is this thing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate your time, and my purpose for being here tonight is to provide some information and then maybe answer some questions if you have any. We, as you know, our Board of Education back in August approved placing on the ballot an initiative for bonds. And I know you know this, but just for the benefit of the general public, this is not a mill levy override. It's a bond initiative that is designed specifically to address three areas. One is student growth. The second is safety throughout our schools. And then the third is just the normal maintenance that ties into safety, but it includes a lot of things: roofs, carpets, drywall, parking lots, etc. So that is, and these are the three areas that this bond will focus on. A couple of things have come together that, actually a few things have come together that enable us to put this on the ballot without increasing taxes. The first is the assessed valuation has increased significantly. The growth of our population has increased significantly, and we have been able to pay down a considerable amount of our debt long before it was due, which has saved taxpayers somewhere around $88 million in interest. And so those three factors enable us to do this. The other thing that I think is important to understand is the only way in Colorado that this can be achieved is through a bond initiative. There's no other way to garner the funds to do this. So if people say, live within your means, or why are you coming to the community? There is no other way to do this. And we are at a critical juncture in that if we don't move forward at this point in time, a future bond would almost undoubtedly result in a significant increase in taxes. And the reason I say that is because deferred maintenance continues to grow costs. Because as you have a roof that's leaking, if you don't fix it in a timely manner, the cost to fix it increases significantly. So you have that factor. You also have the inflation factor, and all of these things working together. So what I share with people is it's not if a bond passes, it's when a bond passes, because there's no other way to do this in school districts. And so the question becomes, how do we as a school system do this and create as minimal amount of stress on a community? And so we identified the dollar amount, which is lower than what we could actually use, but we stopped at that dollar amount to ensure that taxes would not go up. The other thing that we have been able to do is we lowered the mill levy rates by 1.147. And we did that last spring. And depending on assessed valuation and other things, our objective would be to continue to do that to bring down taxes. So not only are we not increasing them, but we are actually lowering them, and we have. The other thing that I think is important for the community to understand is that the significant amount of growth that I'm talking about is here. And in the absence of the ability to build additional schools, the school district can no longer support any further development, because we would not have the capacity to put students in the schools. And so we need to be transparent with you to let you know where we are. There's a few communities that are in this area that are the places where the growth is most significant. And oftentimes, I know the town and others will come to us and say, we want to do this development. Do we have your support? You're always going to have our support. So it's not a matter of support in the technical, but we couldn't in good faith say, yes, we can accommodate that support. And so that's the other piece of this that I think is important, because people say, well, if it doesn't pass, are you still going to build the schools? And the answer to that question is no, because we wouldn't have the revenue to do it. in this area, what you're going to see, actually, I'll give you the whole landscape, but we'll start with this area. There will be another high school because the current high school is full, and you've got growth in Firestone, Frederick, and Dacono. That will be about a 2,000 student high school on a 73-acre plot of land. And then on that same plot of land, there will be a new career and tech ed center that will include programs like construction management, automotive technology maybe, culinary arts, optics, electronics, machining, welding, all of those types of things, where our students can earn a 2-year certificate and go right out into the workforce making pretty good money. We have one center in Longmont, but currently the students in the Carbon Valley have to be bused into that center. That center has a waiting list now of 400 students. So a new one out here would not only eliminate the need for transportation into Longmont, it would also create hundreds of additional seats in the Longmont facility and hundreds of additional seats out here for Carbon Valley students and residents. So those are a couple of the areas. We're also looking at building another elementary school in Erie, and then we need a pre-K through 8 in Meade. They've got Bear Lakes and a whole host of other developments. And then we also will have another pre-K through 8 in Longmont next to our Innovation Center. And then the Innovation Center would increase in size. So those are the areas of growth. And then every single one of our approximately 60 schools will be impacted by the safety features and the renovation. So there'll be no school left untouched, so to speak, or not benefiting from this. And again, the most significant benefits will be, and need will be, out in this area. So those are some of the things that I would want you to know about where we are and what our intentions are, and hope that you would support this initiative based on the need. It's not a would like to have, it's a must have. And it's my job in many ways to share the need with the communities, to share what would happen if the bond passes and what would happen if the bond doesn't pass, so that everybody understands the ramifications either way, and then the communities can make a decision. The reason I come to you is because I know you're elected officials, and part of your responsibility is looking at these issues and making decisions as to whether or not it's in the best interest of your community or whether or not you think it's not. And that's up to you. I just want to be fully transparent with why we are putting a bond on the ballot this year. And again, I thank you very much for your time. I'd like to open it up to some questions, and then I'd like to close by sharing with you some pretty exciting things that are happening in the schools, because there's a lot to be excited about with our children.
Questions?
I've got a question to sit me. Why the difference between a K through 8, and then you have some other schools like elementary, and then you have middle schools?
Yeah. You know, some of that is based on what you already have in a community. So like, for example, Meade currently has an elementary school. They have a middle school, so parents that would like that option have it. But some like the pre-K through 8 option because they have kids at the middle level and at the elementary level, and they'd like their kids to all go to one school for transportation initiatives. Some people like the continuity of not going from one school and then to another school, but rather staying in the same for 8 years. And then some of it has to do with land acquisition, because sometimes you may not have access to a plot of land for an elementary school and a plot of land for a middle school. So there are a variety of different reasons. So if you look at, for example, in Erie, they have Soaring Heights, which is a pre-K through 8, but they also have Erie Middle School, and then some of the elementary schools. So that's, you know, it's an option, it's a choice.
Vidya, Trustee Van. You answered a couple of the questions that I've received, and I wanted to ask a clarifying question. You explained that the Innovation Center would be expanded, so we're not talking about building a new one out here, just an expansion to be able to facilitate more for the district.
That's right. The Career and Tech Ed Center would be a new one,
Which is
but the Innovation Center would be because we want to grow our aviation program and all of those types of career-based opportunities for students.
yeah, which was the clarifying question on the CTEC, which is good. I want to make sure I understand that, and also. Is it our understanding, or is it my understanding that there'll be another district pool built with the creation of, for lack of a better term, high school 9 or high school 10 or whatever?
There would not be a pool built with the bond.
Okay, but there'd be.
What we were able to do with Silver Creek is build a pool off of interest dollars, and we generate quite a bit of money from interest, because we've generated about $70 million in grants. And those grants have enabled us to build a fund balance that then draws interest. So we're able to build that. We do have a desire to build a swimming pool out here, but it would not be through this bond.
Okay, but the thought is that location in the future
May not.
okay.
It may not be at the new high school. It may be at the existing high school. We'd have to look at where it would be best placed.
Okay.
But it would be out here.
Perfect. And then one other question that I think is significant, and then I can give you some other feedback just from talking to people about this, because this is in the high school. This is the topic of conversation from parents. Looking at, I know that Erie is vastly overcrowded, and that Frederick this year now moves into that category of overpopulated. So I know that is going to relieve both of those schools. Do you have an idea? I know it's probably way too early to define this, but what the hopes of where you're hoping to draw those numbers from to kind of alleviate the pressure of those schools, like what neighborhoods maybe, or boundaries? I know it's to come. There's more details, I'm sure, but
no, but it would primarily be from Frederick, Firestone, and Dacono. There may be some who choose to enroll in from Meade or from Erie, depending on their wishes, because we do have open enrollment. When we open a new school similar to this one that we would be opening, in the early years we allow for open enrollment from outside of our district, because you want to fill it up as quickly as possible to develop that economy of scale, so that you can offer all the programs like choir, band, orchestra. Because if we were to limit it to just this for the first year, you might have 200-300 kids in it. But the next year you're gonna have 600 kids. The next year you're gonna have 900 kids, and it's gonna fill up quick. But we want to have that enrollment population immediately for the revenue that allows for a full comprehensive high school right out of the chutes, versus saying to the kids, well, because there's only 300 of you now, we can't offer orchestra, or we can't offer whatever.
And I think you answered that in this question, but I just wanted to clarify too. When it opens, because it is a new school, are you going to start it with freshman, sophomore only, or do you intend to go freshman to senior? I know there's both models. I'm just curious.
We would like to start it out with all the way through, but what we imagine is that the freshman and sophomore classes will be the heaviest, and then there would be some juniors and seniors, and then as those classes move through. Because, more often than not, kids who are situated at their current high school aren't going to want to leave that high school and start fresh in a new high school. Some will. I remember I was part of opening Eagle Crest High School in the Cherry Creek School District, and we started, we had the 9th and 10th graders. The 9th graders class was completely full, and the 10th grade class was a smattering of kids from other schools that wanted a fresh start, wanted a new environment, saw different opportunities. We also think this school will fill up quickly because of the proximity of the Career and Tech Ed Center, because the opportunities there are going to be so amazing for students. And it's also going to contribute to workforce development, because some of these jobs are hard to fill. And we're seeing our students really succeed with the current one. So.
Any other? Oh.
We're getting ready to consider final adoption of our comprehensive plan in a couple weeks, and we always try to plan out many years in advance, and so for the bond bond issue, how many years out does it take care of?
About 8 to 10. Yeah, we went for a bond in 2008, and then we went for a bond in 2016, and then this one. This one's a little bit larger, and so it will take us further because of the size of the new high school and things along those lines. But that's about the time that we would get from it.
And just for our perspective, from 2016 to now, what's the increase in population? Because I know it's substantial, but just having that number would be.
Yeah, we're somewhere in the ballpark of 33,000 students. And when I started in the district, I've been in the district 25 years, but I've been the superintendent for 17 years, and I've just seen massive growth. We're ultimately going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 60+ thousand students within our 411 square miles, and the majority of that's going to be out here. And so it's an exciting time. It's challenging. I mean, there's no doubt it's challenging, but it's also an exciting time because the opportunities for these children are going to be off the charts.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, well, a couple of things that I'm just very proud of is last year we had the highest graduation rate of all of the large districts in the metro area, as well as the highest graduation requirements. And that was at 93.3. This last year, we're going to see a jump to 94.2% on-time graduation, and our dropout rate will remain in the vicinity of 0.6. So 99.4% of our students are going to finish, the majority of them in 4 years. And those two factors are really important because when you look at the economic benefits or drawbacks with kids who graduate versus when they don't, and the burden that places economically and through public safety and property values, everything is impacted by that really important statistic and data point. And there's a lot of other things. If you follow, and I say this not because it's my Twitter feed or my Facebook feed or anything, because I don't use it personally. I just use it to highlight our students and our teachers and our staff. But if you follow and you look at the recent information coming out of these schools, Frederick High School, with the number of students that are completing a full year of college before they ever walk out the door, and the number of students that are earning their associate degree at no cost to the student. And so when we say to parents, one, we're not going to increase your taxes, but two, your families will save tens of thousands of dollars on college tuition, on getting employment for your students. So it is a huge opportunity. And you guys, here's the thing. I'm in my 40th year. I'm not going to be here to see this through 10 years. But what I want you to know is it will put St. Vrain, we are already at the top of the heap. It will separate us in terms of quality and opportunity from every other school system in this state and beyond. And the opportunity to do this without raising taxes it's just a unique opportunity. And so I hope that you'll consider that, and I hope that you'll consider formally supporting it. So
We appreciate that, and I will just. It's always hard doing this job because I have multiple hats in this community, but I can tell you from talking, again, being a teacher at Frederick High School, talking to parents tonight down the road, there are a lot of questions about this, and it's mostly positive and excited because they do see where we are at that bursting at the seams thing, and we're not even close to what I know Erie's at. So I know that the conversations and the talk out here is pretty supportive of that, and we appreciate that. So what we will do, because where it needs to fall on the agenda is when we get to our trustee and mayor reports, we'll talk about this. And then if that decision is made to move forward, then we've got to adopt an ordinance to be able to vote on that by the 22nd. But I know just from working with these wonderful people for the last, 4 years or so, that this is a board that supports our schools out here. We've had conversations about not, like you said, not if, but when that building opens, how can we support them with some of the things that we're doing for Frederick High School to make sure that they are a welcome and valued part of the community as well. We've got plans to do little things like crosswalks and making them the school colors. We're working with Dr. Fox and his team to do some signage pointing people into the school. And whatever we do with that one, we will definitively do with the other one if that bond passes, which again, out here, hearing things, it's pretty solid. So yeah, we appreciate that. But I know that on the individual level, talking to most of these people, there's a lot of support for our schools, and we want to make sure that our kids have everything that they need out here.
And we have always felt that support. And, more often than not, I'm on the other side of this conversation with our board meetings. And I know that oftentimes people come to the podium to share a question or a concern, but I really want you to hear this. You guys have been an amazing community. You are an amazing community, and you have provided support for our children, your children, in ways that all I can do is tell you thank you. So, all right.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our presentations is Chris Tone, representing the Booster Club at Frederick High School, correct? Okay. It's okay. No worries.
I knew he looked familiar.
Chris Tone. I'm kind of a silent partner of the Frederick Boosters Club since my daughter graduated 2 years ago. Came here to thank the board, Public Works, and Frederick Police for helping support the homecoming parade. Usually try to come beforehand to get that support and everything. And I know you guys have already done that, and I really appreciate that. From somebody just that's in the community and love the tradition. Coming here back in '99, remember the first time I was trying to come home from work from Rocky Flats, and I got stuck trying to figure out why there was a parade in the middle of the day in the middle of the week. Because I came from Arvada, we didn't have those. Now being here for 20 plus years, realize how special that really is. Because people like Arvada and even probably some schools within St. Vrain don't have that opportunity to do something special like that. Along with, I'm going to get on the docket beforehand for the senior parade to come and see you guys beforehand this time. But it's just a neat tradition. It's something special that a lot of communities don't do. Some, and a lot do. And it's kind of that small town feel that we try to keep as we grow larger. Some of the surrounding schools kind of do the same thing too. So it's great to see as we support the kids and make this special. So I just want to say thank you for the continued support. Maybe next time we'll try to bring some eye candy, as in some high school kids. Them saying thank you also. So I really appreciate it. And I need to send you guys the link to the photos I took because I was right out down the road here. And they're year photos. So if you guys want to use them for anything and just pride and, kids smiling and all that kind of stuff. So, but I appreciate it. And the bond the bond, I support that because that makes my house value better. And it just sounds like a great idea. So he didn't get to hear that, but we don't always agree, but I'll agree with him on this one. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
buddy.
So is that something that we also need to talk about during the mayor and trustee reports?
You could, Mayor Pro Tem, you could do it now or wait till Mayor Trustee
So
reports.
traditionally, in terms of supporting the parade, so traditionally we've done that as a part of the item itself.
Okay. Then we can certainly do that.
Well, he left, but Mayor Pro Tem Brown, I moved.
Second.
Right, motion and second.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Trustee March,
Yes.
Trustee Lamont,
Yes.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla. Motion passes 5-0.
Public comment. This portion of the agenda is provided to allow members of the audience To provide comments to the Board of Trustees, please sign in and you will be called. If your comments or concerns require an action, that item or items will be needed to place on a later agenda. Please limit the time of your comments to 3 minutes, but we don't have anyone who's signed up, correct? All right. Moving on to staff reports.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem and board members, just a couple of items in addition to the staff report that's in your packet. On November 5th, we'll send some additional information out there. We are doing our annual all-employee meeting. If you're interested, please let the town clerk's office know. So if we need to post it, happy to do that. But I've received a couple of questions or comments from board members wondering if we were doing that. We will be doing that on November 5th, and we'll provide some additional information to you regarding that. And then I think this is huge. We've had a number of wins, and we're working on, a lot of the celebration that we've had recently with what we talked about at the last board meeting with the Savvy Award, in addition to the Meadowlark team members that were working throughout the night with that water shut off. Another big win this last week, credit to Jason Leslie and the engineering team, the parks team. There was a lot of heavy lifting and work going on last week to get Colorado Boulevard open ahead of schedule. Communications, there's a lot of people, team members involved in that. We really, really appreciate their hustle and teamwork in that. We received a lot of positive comments from the community in regards to that. It's a great project. I think, just in terms of what that's bringing to this community is starting to come to realization, and it's pretty exciting. So some things in the future that I know, a couple of questions I've gotten, we'll be working on landscaping further long-term in the medians, or not in the medians, but in the roundabout particularly, as, potential, what that looks like, and opportunities to incorporate art. So that will be coming later down the road. So, but thanks to the team for all their hard work on that.
Right. Any questions, follow up on that? All righty then. We will just carry on then. Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and vote. There will be no separate discussion of consent agenda items unless a board member so requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered at the end of the consent agenda. Someone wants to make a motion, we can.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
All right.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Trustee March,
Yes.
Trustee Lamont,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. And now we're on to action agenda item H, and that is Autumn.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. I'm Autumn Gonzalez, staff planner. I'll be co-presenting a large land use code amendment package alongside my colleague, Bailey Arvizu. She is our associate planner. This is her first time presenting before the board, so we're all very excited to see how much she's going to rock it. So this item aligns with our strategic plan, specifically Focus Area 2.5, Community and Economic Vitality. It states continue work on updating the land use code, and that's exactly what this amendment is doing. It's amending that code. So there are a lot of interim amendments coming before the board. Many have been scheduled for the near future. So this slide is really breaking down what we've done and where we're going. So starting at the top, I listed the overall land use code update, and we're looking at Q1 2025 for that update. And as we all know, that is going to rewrite entire chapters and sections of our code. And the goal is to modernize our code and make it more flexible for developers, residents, staff, to make it more user-friendly as well. And a big goal of that update is to align our land use code with our fresh comprehensive plan that is coming soon to this board. Previous amendments to our land use code include oil and gas regulations. You've seen use table updates and recently a landscape code section. Some interim amendments include this amendment package tonight, as well as natural medicine and oil and gas regulations. So this package has several sections that we are amending. I wanted to list them here just so we all can understand how significant this amendment is, but I will not be going over each section in detail. Instead, I'm going to pull out key areas and sort of focus themes. So the purpose of these amendments are what we broke down into these 3 bullet points: in response to state law changes, in response to changing community needs, and of course, general cleanup. This item went before the Planning Commission in August, and they did recommend approval with conditions to the board. I will go over those conditions later on in the presentation. Like I said, I wasn't going to go over every section in great detail, but we did break this down into 5 key themes. Those are seen here on the left in blue: accessory uses in buildings. The purpose of these amendments, due to responding to state law changes, we're amending our animal standards, and our goal is to create clear standards and general cleanup. We're also tackling residential protection standards, and the purpose of this amendment is to provide more flexibility for development. Plan unit development is listed here, and this is in response to community needs and creating documents that are easier to follow and track. And lastly, our major theme is amending our minor subdivision regulations, and the goal is to create more effective process. I'm going to turn it over to Bailey now to go over accessory uses in buildings. You can click here to advance and go back.
Hello, Board of Trustees. Thank you for having me here. So the first thing I'd like to go over is the accessory uses in buildings that we are proposing to amend. And as Autumn mentioned, this is in response to some state legislature changes that occurred, specifically the House bill that you see referenced there. This addresses accessory dwelling units, and basically this necessitates that municipalities allow 1 accessory dwelling unit as an accessory use to a single unit detached dwelling. Another way to read this would be that we must allow 1 accessory dwelling unit as an accessory to every single family detached dwelling in our municipality. So that's our goal with this amendment, is to make sure that we address that to be in compliance with state standards, but we also decided this was a great opportunity to take a look at this section as a whole and just make updates that were necessary at this time. So I'd like to go over some of those additional updates that we're doing. So of course, first thing that we're addressing is the state standard. So we're allowing a single family detached dwelling in any zone district, as long as it's accessory to a single family detached dwelling. Additionally, we're allowing ADUs as accessory to religious place of assembly. This is also called a parsonage. This is actually quite common in other municipalities. We noticed we did not have this in our code, so we've found a good opportunity to go ahead and add that in. And finally, we are proposing a accessory dwelling unit as accessory to a storage facility for security purposes only. This is already in our code, but we did notice that we need some clarification and additional standards regarding that. So we have some specific size limitations for each of these ADUs. Our proposed standards do limit the maximum size of ADUs proposed, currently more than our existing code does, actually. So we are proposing a maximum of 1,000 square feet for an ADU. And we are remaining in compliance with the state legislature by we must allow between 500 and 800 square feet for ADUs. So we can't force them outside of those bounds. Some additional standards regarding location requirements. So for instance, for lots over an acre, we're asking that those ADUs be placed behind the principal structure. And then we aren't changing any of our existing parking standards, which currently state that for an ADU with 1 bedroom, you would need to provide an additional 1 off-street parking space. And then for each additional bedroom, you'll have an additional off-street parking space required, but not to exceed 2 that would be required. And then the next amendment that I wanted to discuss is in regards to our animal standards. This would also be known as the keeping of agricultural animals, so think any type of cattle, chickens, pigs, etc. The main reason that we're proposing this now is because we noticed some ambiguity and some gaps in our current code regarding this. So a lot of questions from residents, how many can I have? And it was kind of unclear. So we wanted to make sure this was addressed as soon as possible so that our residents have clear direction on what they're allowed as far as those types of animals. So some key amendments to note, we are proposing the number of chickens, bees, and other agricultural animals be allowed specifically based on property size. So now it's tied to someone's property size. So as you have more property, you would have a little bit more space and more animals allowed. Second, we're creating an animal unit table. So this is something that our current code actually already has, but it's not referenced in our code anywhere. It's not being utilized. So we decided to expand upon that and then reference it, actually utilize it to provide clear direction on how many animals are allowed in each lot. And then we are amending our use table regarding agricultural uses. So one of the key things we're doing here is removing commercial agriculture as a use allowed in residential zone districts. That's probably the biggest amendment we're making to that table, otherwise just some cleanup items there. And then there are additional location requirements that we're proposing, just some setback requirements for the keeping of animals to other adjacent lots. This is just for reference. I think this is helpful to see what we're proposing. So on the left, you'll see our animal unit table that is in our code that we are proposing. And what this does is it shows the permitted animal densities that are established by use of an animal unit table, where the specified number of each animal is equivalent to one animal unit. So a variety of animals can be kept as long as the maximum number of animals allowed per your lot is not exceeded. And for reference, you'll see the other table on the right that shows how many animal units would be allowed based on lot size. So you'll use those two tables together to determine for each lot what would be allowed. And this is only allowed in RE, so residential estate, or ag zone districts. So that, I think again, that would be like cattle. Chickens and bees are actually allowed more in a variety of spots, but this would be for cattle and some of the animals you see listed there. And I will turn it off to Autumn.
Great. So our third amendment theme is residential protection standards. And currently, several industrial and some of our BLI zone properties cannot develop because of this residential protection standard. The standard is a dimensional spacing requirement, a buffer to residential zone districts. And what we're finding is several vacant lots in industrial parks cannot develop because of this standard. So we wanted to propose some amendments. The first bullet point states that the proposal includes amending the distance requirement for specific uses. So we looked at the uses that give us the most trouble, and we wanted to reduce some of those distance requirements. We're also proposing alternatives to meeting that distance requirement, and the two bullets below that are the actual standards proposed. So off-site landscaping buffers in outlots at least 30 feet in width is an alternative, or the second one, on-site landscaping buffers at least 30 feet in width would be another alternative. And we really feel that this will maintain a buffer to residential uses, but it will also help these vacant properties develop. Again, with specific uses, it's only a handful of them listed in our amendment package. Our fourth theme is PUD amendments, and I think this is probably the most important area of this amendment package. PUDs are located all throughout Frederick, and we see more pressure to develop with this zoning process. We want to change this because we are seeing a lot of community needs that would require these standards to be modified. We are seeing a lot of development pressure, especially commercial. And right now, listed under existing process, we have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. It's really a three-step process to zone to a PUD. An applicant comes in and they rezone to a PUD overlay. And then the second step, they come in with a preliminary development plan that sets those preliminary standards. And then the third step, they come in with the final development plan for specific areas. Sounds pretty simple, but this process has dragged out over years. We have some areas zoned PUD with no standards from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even beyond that. We're finding it very hard to track what documents were approved. Some of the standards are so outdated, they don't reflect current comp plan changes, current values of the community. So this is a big red flag that we wanted to tackle with these proposed amendments. And what we're proposing is the new process would require rezoning to PUD as the zone district. So it's no longer an overlay on top of a base zone, which is kind of complicated. They come in and they zone to PUD, and that is the zone district. The second bullet point states that the zoning document would contain the zoning map and the standards. So instead of splitting it off with a PUD overlay zoning document, and then 10 years later we get a PDP and then an FDP, it's now one document. When they zone to PUD, they come before the board. Here are the standards we are proposing. It's one document, it's clean, it's easy to track. So again, I stress that this is probably the most important amendment in this whole package, and we're really excited to present it tonight. Other proposed changes to PUDs include landscaping. We are proposing to tie landscaping to subdivisions and density and not PUD zoning. Currently, we require 25% landscaping in all PUDs, regardless of how many lots, regardless of the size. It doesn't make sense, and it's extremely difficult to track. So we are removing landscaping from PUDs, and we'll let subdivisions and density take that on. And lastly, what is noteworthy is we are amending the process for amending PUDs. So if you have an existing PUD, we're now breaking it out into two different avenues. If it's a substantial amendment, that would go forward to the Planning Commission and not to the board. If it's a minor amendment, if they want to change fence heights or change maybe a landscape requirement, it is now proposed to be staff level. Our last big theme within this presentation is minor subdivisions. Current standards state that no minor subdivision may be processed if right-of-way needs to be dedicated. So if you have a 4-lot subdivision with right-of-way, you cannot go forward with a minor subdivision. That forces the applicant into a preliminary plat and then a final plat. So it forces them into two public hearing processes, two different fees. It's very difficult if it's a small subdivision. So this proposed update removes this requirement. If they are 10 lots or less and have right-of-way, they can go forward with a minor subdivision. Minor subdivisions go to the Planning Commission and to Town Board. The end product is still a plat. We're still achieving what we would have before, but with a lot less process and money. This whole package was adequately published, the notice requirements per our land use code. We feel this package meets our review criteria listed in our land use code. We have 4 of them here. I provided responses in my staff report. Like I mentioned before, the Planning Commission did have a public hearing in August, and they did recommend approval with conditions. 4 yes and 0 no was the vote. I think you'd like to go with the conditions of approval.
Yeah, so the conditions that you see here proposed by Planning Commission all do relate to the animal standards that we're proposing. So I just want to go over those point by point. So the first, staff does support this condition, which would limit the number of animal units allowed for the RE zone district to 5, which would be consistent with the 3-acre requirement currently proposed. So it would limit it to 5, whereas our current code, depending on the size of the lot, could go up to 10 animal units. So this was just a concern with the amount of animals that would be allowed in RE zones. So that is something that staff would support. The second, staff feels may be a little bit too soon to approach, and this is specifically a conditional use process for an RE zone district to apply to have more animal units or even to have a commercial agriculture as their principal use. And staff just feels this might be a little bit too soon to consider, not that we oppose it, but this may align a little bit better with our full land use code update because we want to define commercial agriculture a little bit better, provide some additional standards regarding that, because we feel it's a little bit lacking at the moment. So it just might be something to come back to when we're a little bit more prepared to handle that. The third one, staff does support with maybe a little bit of a revision. So this would require a minimum of 3 acres to keep a bison. And we do totally support that. We would just ask that not only in RE zones, but also in ag zones, that standard be applied. So those 3 are what Planning Commission brought forward. Staff does recommend approval of the land use code amendment package with the amendments we just discussed to the Board of Trustees. Certainly encourage and welcome any discussion regarding those Planning Commission conditions. And this would be our recommended amendment to those conditions. So of course, the first one is just accepted as is. The second one, we would more support dropping at this time, maybe circling back around. And the third one, now listed as number 2, just with that little minor adjustment that the ag zone is also added in. So these are the action options. Of course, approval with amendments, and then denial. And that is all. We're open to questions.
Go ahead. You first.
On the animal tables, does this put any existing residents out of compliance?
We don't have a full inventory of all of the lots that are keeping animals right now. So we would be unclear if it does or not, but the idea is not to do that. So we're trying to be as comprehensive as we can. So we are allowing as much as we can to make sure there isn't compliance, but we wouldn't know for sure, unfortunately.
I will expand upon that. We are finding a lot of properties are non-conforming right now, and this code would bring them into compliance.
Okay. That's true.
And then why do we have bison? Why bison? Why are we talking about that?
I was at the Plan Commission meeting, so the discussion was interesting. The Plan Commissioners felt that bison are very aggressive animals, and I think everyone agreed to that. We don't have to research that. They discussed bison running into structures and being very aggressive with other animals. So they threw out a 3-acre minimum just as a number to increase it. We agreed to that. Again, we're recommending that that 3-acre minimum gets expanded to agriculture. With the future land use code update, we're happy to research that more. Maybe there is some magic number, but we felt any increase was appropriate.
I just like a commentary. Getting species specific is, I think that's interesting if we don't have any. Maybe we have bison and Frederick right now.
Potentially, again, we don't have an inventory, so who knows what people keep. The list that Bailey worked on tried to capture the most common animals that we find in the region. Yeah, but again, we don't have an inventory of what's out there.
Just
I
a
would
note
add, I would add, in my experience when I was out in Fort Morgan, the keeping of bison and the processing of it is far more popular now than it was a decade or 2 ago. So an older code wouldn't have comprehended that was even an option.
It's popular now.
It is becoming more popular, and they are delicious.
Agree with you there.
Keeping a bison is more popular now, you say?
It is now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. When I started my career out in Fort Morgan, you'd saw a lot of these feedlots that would turn over to a bison farm instead of traditional cattle. Because now you can sell it at a premium, and it's kind of an exotic thing. So it's becoming more and more popular.
Is it something that we want to, I mean, if we go even with a 3-acre lot, is that enough for a bison? I don't know that is.
Great question. I mean, the alternative suggestion would be that you clearly prohibit them if you don't feel comfortable having them.
Big
I don't want to
animal.
prohibit bison. No way.
You don't want to you don't want to prohibit bison.
I don't want to prohibit any like animal. in
Well,
Frederick.
I like bison and I like the field, but even 3 acres is kind of tight for me. I think they're aggressive, but yet they're beautiful.
It's all about the fences.
Part of it,
Yeah.
part of it to consider is I don't know how many 3-acre plus lots we have in Frederick that would actually be able to fit this versus 5. You might be ending up with the same number of properties.
Okay.
If I may, our current code does permit bison, and we don't have standards around it. So 3 acres is a major step forward. Again, we're happy to do research for the future land use code amendment. Maybe there is a science behind it.
And you again are talking about residential estate, not, a bison in the backyard in some of you estates. Okay.
This has a blanket
I
standard.
wouldn't want that, but yeah.
This has a blanket standard that your lot must be a ½ acre in size, and it is only permitted residential estate and ag.
And I also don't want to go too far down in the weeds. Do we have a provision for exotic animals, like, for instance, a peacock? Because they are rather noisy, and at one point we did have a peacock in Frederick.
Yeah.
How we address that is by saying any animals not listed in the table, which was up there, is not up there anymore, would just be subject to a review by the director. So that's just kind of a catch-all for any of those other animals that people might be interested in keeping. Oh, you have to go there.
That was my biggest curiosity on the animals, because there's a whole rabbit hole of things that we can go down talking about animals. But
I had more questions.
I'm sorry, I did interrupt you. I apologize.
So if we want to finish the animal conversation, then
I've settled all my curiosities. I'm sorry, Trustee, but yeah, I am.
but I was just gonna say I have others not related to the animals. The PUD amendments so what I understood you to say was existing developments that have already done the first 2 existing steps. If they wanted to amend their PUDs, that would be at the staff or planning commission level.
So that's a good question. Thank you. I think the amendment process is for new PUDs moving forward. The provisions do have some language for existing preliminary development plans. If they wanted an amendment, I think there's an 18-month provision that they have to initiate that amendment, or the PUD becomes null and void. I don't know if that's the correct terminology. So that sort of pressures them to deal with those existing ones. There's also an option to expire them if they don't pull building permits within, I believe, a year in this language. So if they wanted to amend an existing PDP and there's no final development plan, they need to come in with that final development plan, or we expire them essentially. So new PUDs moving forward, we're going to have that process of the minor or the major.
The hope is to remove PUDs overlays as a speculative opportunity where people come in, throw a little bit of pen to paper, and then sit for 10 or 15 years and then come back and try to force things through the process.
So a more intentional process.
Yeah. If you're going to come through at the front end with the new process, you're going to come through at the front end with a complete package that that is approved, that then has standards applied to it. If they want to amend it later because economics changed or they got through portions of it and now the world is in a different place, there's an avenue for that. But what we're trying to discourage is speculative zoning, so that and land use applications, so that these things sit and fester, and then the world is a very different place, and they're trying to hold on to bits and pieces of 25-year-old Frederick 25 years ago and new Frederick and make up something that suits the developer but not necessarily the community.
And then just the last thing I had was I did ask Ally earlier on the accessory dwelling units if we were going to run into parking issues. But I think for the clarification, Ally, that they would come with parking spots, basically. We would still have to have parking spots if we have accessory dwelling units.
Right, and I think it's also important to remember that those ADUs would require to meet all the applicable setbacks. So if you have a tight neighborhood with very tight lot lines, an ADU physically won't fit in those spaces, and so you wouldn't have the exacerbated parking issues. These would be in the large places where there's larger lots, so you do have larger frontage, but still requiring some of that off-street parking is discussed.
Good. I've got one for the ADUs. You mentioned that before the average size, I think you said, was 500 to 800 square feet, and you want to expand it to 1,000.
So the size that we're required to allow by the state standard is 500 to 800 square feet. What we're proposing as the maximum is 1,000 square feet. That's actually more restrictive than some of our current standards. And that would only be if the standard goes that it has to be no more than 50% of the size of the principal dwelling. So let's say you have a 1,600 square foot home, then 800 is already the most you can go. If you have a 2,000 square foot home, 1,000 you could go. If you have 5,000 square foot home, you still can't go more than 1,000, if that clarifies.
Logic being, if you could fit a 4,000 square foot home as an ADU in your backyard, perhaps you ought to consider subdividing your property.
What I was wondering, that's the reason I was asking. So,
So
okay.
having an upper limit so that it's still kind of
An accessory.
dwelling as opposed to a full-blown dwelling. Yeah.
It's like a house from the 70s anyway, 1,000 square feet.
I grew up in a house with 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Can we discuss that bison thing? It's still sticking in my head. Just clarify for me. So if we approve this tonight and we find that the bison, it's recommended that bison have more than 3 acres, can that be amended or adjusted? I mean, I guess that's, Jason, a question for you.
Yeah, so ultimately code can be re-amended. So, as Adam pointed out previously, currently the code allows you to have bison, but we don't have any parameters on what that looks like. So this would be a step in the right direction. The board could continue to encourage staff to look into it further, find if there's any science or analytics that say 4 acres is the magic number, whatever that might be. And we can come back as we do additional land use code items and make that modification. So this, I say it's set in stone, it's the law, but it's the law until the governing body decides to change the law. And you have that authority, which is what we're doing tonight as well.
Good.
Any other questions? All right. I had to push the magic button and go back to the
amendments.
Yeah, amendment things.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then let's get some direction so we know how to go forward with this.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown, I move to approve ordinance number 1399. Ordinance of the Town of Frederick, Colorado, amending the town's land use code regarding accessory dwelling units, the keeping of animals, residential protection standards, planned unit developments, and minor subdivisions, with the recommended amendments in the RE zone district, limit the total number of animal units by using the proposed 3-acre calculation as the maximum for parcels 3 acres or more in size. And the second in the RE and A zone districts of bison shall only be permitted on parcels with a minimum size of 8.
Second.
All right.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Trustee Lamont,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Trustee March.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
If I could, usually when we have amendments to an ordinance, it's always my recommendation to kick it, but because these are very clear, specific letter changes or a number change, I think staff has the ability to go forward. We're not drafting additional new language for your review.
Wonderful.
Throw that out there because other times when we have amendments on the fly, I would say like, well, we'll bring it back so you can actually review the language, but that's a simple change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna go buy a buffalo.
Yeah, I kind of want one now too. Let's all join together and get a town buffalo.
How much
Before
space
Trustee
does
Lamont
this
says
farming
farming.
have
Before trusting them.
for your metro
Don't
district?
worry, we can put some.
You're mean though.
Yeah.
Can be.
All right. Item I, we're going to get a third quarter grant administrator update report from Tracy Garcia. Castellas.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. Just as a reminder, we come together quarterly to discuss grant submissions and awards. Let's see. You see? All right. It's not working?
There you go. There you go.
There we go. As always, our grant submissions always try to incorporate our strategic goals. For the third quarter, we submitted 4 grants for the total of $530,000. The first grant you approved back in June was the water reuse study grant, and I'm happy to report last week that we were awarded that grant in the amount of $270,000. This grant really is a deep dive into our water conservation system here for Frederick. The next grant submission we did was a GoCo, the FRA restoration project. That grant is we submitted for $103,000. A final decision for that grant will be in December. It really focuses on invasive species at our Parks Department. We will also, for that grant, a part of that is contracted services with Weld County and for the Youth Corps. And so our Parks Department will work with the Youth Corps and to conquer the invasive species. The next grant is continued support for our Carbon Valley and Meade program, Victims Assistance Program. That is the VAIL, the local funding from the 19th Judiciary District. And that amount is $73,370. Sorry, I'm going to revise that. It's $82,834. And finally, our last grant that we submitted is to the Department of Criminal Justice in Colorado. That is for additional 2 recruits for next year. We should get a notification on that award at the end of the year. Let me go. This, I already spoke about this information. Let me go back here. Just as a reminder, so the total of grant submissions for this year is $820,274. We did receive notice of 2 additional awards. First, back in May, we submitted a DOJ grant for the continued support for the Carbon Valley Meade Victims Assistance Program. This supports salary. And then we received, once again, the Water Reuse Study Award. And we also received from the State Department of Criminal Justice $18,260 for the Phlox safety system. And this really focuses on license plate reading and looking at warrants. So our community impact really focuses on increased public safety for neighborhoods, increased advocacy for victims of crime, and comprehensive planning for water conservation. The next slides I will review is just a breakdown of some of what we submitted for the grants and some of our grant budget. For our total 2024 of all of our grants right now, a majority of those costs is in construction. As you can see, for our 2024 grant submissions, over half of those submissions were for the police department for public safety. And for our federal grants, for the ARPA, as you can see, 83% of that cost is construction. And then we also have our Dr. Cog grant. I want to go back just, we currently right now have $5.2 million in grants that we're administering. So that's, and we've received those funds in a little of 3 years right now. So that's great. We're moving forward and leaning in with our grant submissions and awards. And as you can see, for our 2024 grant submissions, a majority of those submissions focuses really on professional services. So I'll take any questions if you have anything. I do want to say that we are predicting maybe at the beginning of January to do a infrastructure grant on the Safe Streets for All for planning. Just with everything with the constructions on Colorado Boulevard, we just got kind of crazy with our project management. So hopefully we'll get an infrastructure grant in the first quarter of 2025. Any questions? None? Okay. And so the action item is either you can approve a resolution 2024-295 to give the mayor authority to execute necessary documents and agreements if funded. You can approve with conditions or denial. And the staff recommendation, this is really slow. Not working? There we go. And the staff recommends to approve 2024-295.
Didn't realize that we had a
Pro Tem.
what?
Are you looking for?
I was just looking at. I didn't realize it was more than just a report that we had something to vote on. But I just wanted to make sure that was on par.
So yeah, the reason behind setting it up that way is so that we tell you all what we're planning to apply for, and then as we receive them, we don't have to come back for another agenda item and clutter up the agenda with additional action items.
Great. We're looking at approving the resolution.
Yeah. So then we just need a recommendation.
I recommend that we approve the resolution 2024-295. Hereby authorizing.
It's actually resolution 24R55.
24R55.
Right.
That's why I looked at that. I was like, that didn't look right. That's why I was so confused. I was like,
System, not the resolution number. So there was a
okay. So 24R55.
55.
Recommending the approval of resolution 24R55. We're authorizing the mayor to execute necessary documents and agreements to effectuate the third quarter grant 2024 grant awards, if funded after a review by town attorney as applicable. Is that right?
Second.
Trustee March,
Yes.
Trustee Lamont,
Yes.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Trustee Mahan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you so much, Tracy, and keep that money coming.
Yes. Thanks,
More the merrier, right? All right. We've moved to that next to last item. So mayor and trustee reports. Anything to report?
I got some. Last night in Prairie Greens, we had an incident where our police department had to respond. We had one of our residents had a crisis and was pretty hairy for a while, but our police department responded very quickly, and they were able to talk this person down and get him calmed down and take him into custody, and no one was hurt. And but we did have a whole lot of people that were asking what happened because we had like 7 or 8 police cars and the fire trucks and 8 or 10 police officers there responding to this. And so we had a lot of questions. I called Renee, and Renee took care of it, got us an official response to give to the people. And it seems so far I've only gotten like 4 people that have responded to me. So it's an incident I hope no one ever has to go through. We've lived in that neighborhood for 20 years and we know everyone in there pretty good. And this was pretty hairy for us. But again, our police department, the fire department, and Renee came through for us. So thanks, Renee. And Brian, when you get a chance, I'm going to send a thank you to the commander who commanded the team that responded to that. But tell them all thank you again anyway. That's it.
And we saw that memo today. So thanks again, Renee, for reaching out to those people and understanding that community and making sure that we were not in the weeds on communicating with them.
Renee was super.
As always.
No, the only thing I've got is really nice to see Colorado Boulevard open up from Tipple to 52. And it's exciting to see the growth and the development in that intersection and the construction in that intersection. I think it's going to be really well received.
I appreciate it on Facebook. One of our people driving down with their phone, recording them driving down. That is like, glad you're excited. Maybe not the right way to do it.
Well, hopefully they had someone else.
It didn't look like, but whatever.
Steering wheel. I kind of went over the lines.
Hey, I gotta admit, I drove down one way, turned around, and drove back the other way. So it was pretty nice.
I will say I don't know if it's anything that we have control over, but that stoplight at William Bailey and 52 now is causing crazy backups on Highway 52.
Yeah, we can reach out to CDOT, William Bailey and 52.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the gas station.
Yeah. It's cycling really fast, and it's just only a few cars are getting through, especially in rush hour. It's really bad.
Yeah, we should.
That thing, they recycle it, they reset it, and it seems like about every 2-3 weeks it goes ballistic again and it stops, and it's all screwed up. So I don't know. Maybe they need to look at putting a different set of timers in there. I don't know what it is.
They don't know who we talked to about widening Highway 52 and adding lanes.
Oh God.
Renee, I'll get with you later, maybe.
Just don't go there on Fridays. There's no point.
For me, I think potentially just something to think about, and the Safe Routes to Schools or the Safety Schools grant that's going to be applied for, I think is really good. But at some point, getting the PD officers who sit around the schools in the morning and the afternoon and the engineering team together just to look at easy things to do with signs around schools or striping or whatever, I think would be so that, either we can do things now or when we get the grant, we can kind of be ready to go really quickly with those things. And then do we want to talk about the...
Yep, I've got that. I've got that. So before that, just real quick, I wanted to check because I usually am not on Fifth Street at 5 o'clock in the morning, but I was this morning. So those lights that are on the lampstands, are those new and kind of the direction we're moving? Like those are permanent and they look like they can be changed colors. It was neat. It was really exciting.
Yeah.
My exchange student was asking me about this. I was like, I don't know, but this is things we've talked about. So
Team did a great job getting them up, and I'm sure they'll probably look festive throughout the year. So
the quick visual thing that again puts that win of promoting downtown. So just real quickly, so we know what direction is the board because we've talked about it. I think on the side. I know Brian's talked to us, but together as a board. So Dr. Haddad's request of support from us, from talking to Jason and Brian, if we were to decide to do that as a board, they would need to write an ordinance, which we would only be able to adopt at the earliest next at our meeting on the 22nd. So the question is, are we interested in that? I can tell you from Mayor Kreit's response, they had a mayor meeting that she was at and he was at, and said that as a community, as individuals, we're okay with supporting it, but our goal is not as a town to support an external governmental entity in their doing, because then at that point every single time, like with the school district or with Carbon Valley Rec Center or the fire district, which we work with but we are not, we would have to either approve or reject every single thing. So that's, in fairness, as a board, we need to come up with a decision on that. But I know that's where Mayor Kreit's feelings are on that. And again, I meant what I said from my personal perspective and from being a teacher. I do support it. I think it's necessary. However, I do see that dividing line too. So I just wanted to open that up for a quick, I think we can either say, yeah, we do, or no, we don't. And I think let's open that discussion up so that it's on record and we know which direction to move forward as a group.
I'm good with it.
Good.
I don't have any children that are in school at all, so. But those of you that do have children still in school, I listen to you guys a lot, so.
So I guess the question is, would you be good with us releasing approving it or support of it, or just we stay out of it, but as individuals? I guess that's probably the clarifying question.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, if I could real quick.
Yeah, thanks.
So under the Fair Campaign Practices Act, you as a governmental entity have the opportunity on an active ballot measure to make a resolution for or against any particular item. You can do that one time in order to stay compliant with Fair Campaign Practices Act. Okay. You in your individual capacities can do what you'd like to do, but we won't expend any town resources on any sort of active political issue. We're expressly prohibited from supporting particular candidates.
Right.
That's not the question of the day, but while we're on it, we may as well talk about it. So you have that authority prerogative, as you mentioned before, if it is the board's desire to take an official position on behalf of the town, then you'd provide that direction today and we would go back and draft a resolution. If you don't want to take an official position on behalf of the town, then we would just not worry about doing anything.
So approve, deny, or no official position is kind of the question that we need to agree on as a board.
As long as it's legal for us to come out in support of something like that, I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, I don't have kids, but for those of you that do, your school system is the most important thing you've got for them. So I'm for it. I have no problem at all supporting it.
I think I'd rather support as on an individual level, because I agree. I don't want to set a precedent where every other group is coming to us to try to get us to take a formal position on whatever initiatives that they're trying to get approved. I'm happy to hear them out, and I'm happy to do what I will do as my own person, but I don't think that we should take an official formal position as a body.
I agree with Adam or Trustee Mahan. We didn't even discuss it really on Carbon Valley's initiative, the rec center, and I don't want to preclude it in the future, but I think there's already confusion about who we are versus what other districts are, and so I'm okay just not having a position this time, but I don't want to close the door in the future if we need to. But I know the ones we've supported have been the police department in the past, right? And then our Parks and Open Space one, which has been specifically from the town of Frederick, which makes sense.
And I think that's where we have to go and remain, is just specifically for the town, whereas this is more broad, more wide range, and more
For a whole district.
whole district. And I don't think we should be setting ourselves apart like that.
Good with that.
I think if we have to do something for the police, maybe even if we had some, we didn't do it for the Carbon Valley. What was the other one you mentioned?
Well, we did for our Parks and Open Space question.
In the police and the parks. So I would.
But yeah, the fire district, the Carbon Valley Parks and Rec district, the school district, I think those are.
Okay. I'm good with it.
And I agree, and I think that's where our mayor represented us, and I think I felt like that was probably what our feelings were going to be, but I think it was only fair to make that a public conversation so that there was no misunderstanding. I agree completely with that philosophy, because again, we don't want to get in that business and then have to approve and deny everything, because that could get ugly really quickly. But I think the best is, reaching out and saying we support, the town always will support the school district and our schools out here. The individual board members, it sounds like, are all willing to, speak and be supportive on an individual basis. I didn't get anyone like negative about it. So maybe I can work with, I would like it to come from me, since I guess I was here. If it was Tracy, I would ask her to do it, but since I'm here, so that he gets kind of an elected official response versus a staff response. But just saying that, as individuals, we support that, but as a group, we can't, which actually falls in line with what we know Firestone decided to do. Interestingly enough, Meade wasn't going to, but then they did endorse it. So he's got that endorsement from Meade. And I think that's the right path for us to be able to support and work with the group, but not to have to start taking sides
And
down the road.
I agree, and I don't want to. My apologies if it's dragging us down a rabbit hole, but for the Denver Regional Council of Governments, we spend so many meetings there voting on whether or not we support legislation or ballot initiatives, and I abstain because I haven't talked about it as a board. Also, I don't feel like it's the best use of our time to discuss hundreds of legislative items or ballot initiatives on whether or not Frederick is going to vote there at the Council of Government. So some of it, I think, is just the use of our time, too.
I guess I would also ask, is there a way that, as supporting them as a community partner, but not taking an active interest, is there a way that we can support them by getting their information out to our citizens in the least expensive, or, going down, like, is there a way that we can put a link to their site so people can go read it for themselves? I know that the big book for elections came in the mail and I read through that. But just in an effort to try to get information out to them, not an influence, but an information. And I guess probably, Jason, without us doing something that's going to cross that legal, ethical line, is there something that we can do on that?
So I think we could consider on our website with the elections tab, if there's a citizen who happens to go to our election page looking for information, we could have a link to other governmental entities or other places that are hosting those elections for people to find information about it.
And I guess
a little bit less comfortable hosting information because it's not our issue, but certainly don't want people to get to our site, find a dead end, and get frustrated that they don't have the ability to educate themselves.
Yeah, thanks for clearing up my miswording on that. And then I would are we also, in fairness, willing to do the same thing for the rec center? Again, not endorsing them, but providing a way for our public to educate themselves if they go looking on our website, that will point them, again, saying that we're not the ones doing this. This is Carbon Valley Rec Center page. Go look at this.
Right. I think we would just go to their landing page rather than trying to dig in. Because without being the legal advisor for those entities, I don't know how in compliance with the Fair Campaign Practices Act they are with their communications. But I think it's fair to say that we could say, you know, this ballot issue belongs to this governmental entity. Here's a link to their website. You know, I think similarly, we would have information on how to register to vote. You know, contact Weld County in order to learn more about elections generally and things of that nature. I think we could do that.
All right, perfect.
I'm talking on behalf of Renee's team and the clerk's office. So thank you for giving me that liberty.
All right, those I think were the big issues. So, is there anything else? Then, and then we're good, Brian.
Yeah.
All right,
We're good.
let's adjourn so that Brian can go check on his
Brian,
His-
good luck with
his
your,
kiddo.
your little one. Well, she's not little, but your young one.
The youngest.
Yeah, it's like
Thanks, everybody.
in the school district is right on the front page, so it's not pretty easy. That's interesting.
Do we turn these off or do we do
Not at
anything?
all.
with them?
I think you probably should log out.